Hi, Readout 24. My name is Jamison Green. I'm located in the Pacific Northwest, and I've been a member of the LGBTQ plus writing community for 58 years. My first book was a small collection of short stories published in 1976. My best known book, Becoming a Visible Man, was first published in 2004. The revised second edition came out in 2020, and the audiobook version came out in 2022. Today I'm going to read from this anthology, Surviving Transphobia, edited by Laura Jacobs and released in 2023 by Jessica Kingsley Publishers. My piece is entitled Recognizing the Existential. My first conscious encounter with transphobia was when I heard it coming out of my own mouth. Shortly before Christmas 1978, I told my parents that my partner, a woman who they knew as my roommate, was my lover and that we wanted to spend the holidays with both our families. I would be attending her family's festivities and she would be joining ours, I said. My mother often bought Red Book and Family Circle from the grocery store checkout line, and she knew the signs from articles like How to Tell If Your Daughter is a Lesbian. She knew I had refused to wear women's clothing since graduating high school in 1966. I'd tried not to wear women's clothing since I was about 2 years old, but I often lost those battles. She knew I had mostly played with the boys in the neighborhood and that my college friends were largely girls. And she knew that the few young men I trusted enough to bring home were buddies and not romantic interests. So I came out as a lesbian. I insisted that they honor the 4 year committed relationship we'd had. I introduced her to my parents during the first 6 months of our becoming partners, and they had always treated her well. But now my mother's reaction was so thoroughly, vehemently antagonistic that even my father was stunned. She's using you, she spat. She's going to ruin you. How could she say such things about such a kind, gentle woman as my partner? I was so frightened that I blurted out, well, at least I'm not changing my sex. It was then that I realized that I had been exposed to a great deal of transphobia, so much so that I was now spouting it back. Every time I was mistaken for a boy was a psychic triumph that I held inside and never discussed with anyone, especially not my parents. By the time I was a sophomore in college, I knew I was cross gendered, and somehow the wires were tangled or crossed or shorted somewhere between my brain and my body. I didn't know any other words. No one among my family or friends talked about transsexual people. In 1968, I hid in a bookstore for hours to read as much as I could of Gore Vidal's sex change satire Myra Breckinridge, but I was uninterested in seeing the 1970 film. Nothing in this comedic romp had anything to do with my experience of gender. Or Jan Morris's Conundrum introduced the public to the born in the wrong body trope, though that seemed like another kind of fantasy, a simple childlike explanation for feeling different that never sat well with me. I had been born into the body I had, and there was nothing wrong except that it told people to think of me as a girl. My masculinity was not invisible, and it was that dichotomy, the dissonance between my body and my gender expression, that made other people feel uncomfortable with me, that made people tell me I was not behaving properly for a girl. But I wasn't behaving improperly, I was being myself. This was the existential predicament in which some of us find ourselves. Other people refuse to see us, and when we try to express ourselves, they think we are lying or trying to deceive. People like Jan Morris and Christine Jorgensen solved their existential predicaments by transitioning through hormones and surgeries to outwardly express the women they knew themselves to be inside, and people generally seemed to accept them. So why couldn't others treat me as the young man I was? I'd never heard of anyone transitioning from female to male. The possibility had never crossed my mind. I felt that I was different, not that I was broken or that someone else, someone's God, had made a mistake. Thank you.